The night had grown quiet, the house wrapped in the kind of stillness that made every creak of the wood sound louder than it should. I had just finished cleaning up after dinner, the plates stacked neatly, and the counters wiped down. My son, Daniel, who had turned 21 not long ago, sat at the kitchen table with his books spread across it, his brow furrowed in concentration. He was in college now, carrying more than his fair share of worries about grades, scholarships, and the kind of future that always seemed both close and impossibly far. I leaned against the counter and watched him scribble in his notebook, his jaw tightening when he erased something only to write it down again. I recognized that tension too well. It was the same kind I used to carry when I was younger, the same weight of wanting to be perfect, of fearing that a single mistake would ruin everything. "Daniel," I said softly, and he looked up, his eyes tired but alert. "You're working too hard. Take it easy." He sighed, rubbed the back of his neck, and gave me a half-smile. "Mom, I have to. If I don't keep this scholarship, I don't know what I'll do." His words pulled at me in ways I couldn't explain. I knew the sacrifices we had both made, late nights, early mornings, the endless stream of part-time jobs that had paid the bills but drained the spirit. I wanted to remind him that no grade or scholarship was worth losing himself over. But sometimes advice falls flat when someone is in the middle of the storm. So instead, I walked over, placed my hand on his shoulder, and whispered again, "Son, take it easy. You'll get through this." For a moment, he just looked at me, as if measuring whether he could allow himself to rest, whether it was safe to let his guard down. And then, almost like he was younger again, he leaned back in the chair and let out a breath he had been holding for far too long. That small act, his surrender to comfort, stirred something in me, a reminder that even though he was grown, taller than me now, with a deep voice that didn't belong to the boy I once tucked into bed, he was still my son. He still needed reassurance, not just from his books or his friends, but from me. The days that followed became a test of patience and resilience for both of us. His exams loomed closer, and I could see the exhaustion in his posture, the way his hands shook slightly from too much caffeine and too little rest. I tried to distract him with warm meals, with little notes I'd slip into his backpack, like I used to when he was in grade school. Sometimes he would smile when he found them, sometimes he would just shake his head, embarrassed but secretly grateful. One evening, as rain tapped against the windows, Daniel walked into the living room where I sat folding laundry. He looked restless, his steps uneven. "Mom," he started, his voice uncertain, "do you ever feel like no matter how much you do, it's never enough?" I set the laundry aside and motioned for him to sit. "Every single day," I admitted. "When you were little, I worried if I was doing enough to raise you right. When your dad and I divorced, I wondered if I had failed you somehow. Even now, I ask myself if I've done enough to support you through college. But you know what I've learned? Enough isn't always about what you do. It's about what you give from your heart." He looked at me, the tension in his jaw softening as he processed my words. I don't want to let you down." I reached for his hand. "You never could. You've already made me proud just by trying. Don't carry the weight of perfection, Daniel. It will break you. Take it easy, one step at a time." That conversation marked a shift. He started opening up more, about the pressure he felt to succeed, about the loneliness of being in a world that demanded so much, about the doubts that crept in late at night. I listened, sometimes offering advice, sometimes just sitting with him in silence. But as his stress deepened, so did the cracks in his confidence. One night, I found him in his room, staring at a blank screen, his hands shaking. "I can't do this," he whispered. I sat beside him, placed my arm around his shoulders, and whispered what had become our mantra. "Son, take it easy. You're not alone in this. We'll face it together." Slowly, he allowed himself to lean into my words, to believe that failure didn't define him, that exhaustion wasn't weakness. I watched him rebuild piece by piece, not into the perfect student he thought he had to be, but into a young man who understood resilience, compassion, and the strength of allowing himself to rest. As weeks passed, something incredible happened. Daniel began to laugh again, not the forced chuckle he used when pretending everything was fine, but the genuine laughter of someone rediscovering joy. He started inviting friends over, started painting again like he used to when he was younger. He even joined me for walks, where we talked about everything from silly neighborhood gossip to deep questions about life. It wasn't a quick transformation. There were setbacks, nights when he still pushed himself too hard, mornings when he doubted himself. But now he had a voice in his head, my voice, reminding him to take it easy. And little by little he listened. On the day he finished his finals, Daniel came home exhausted but smiling. He dropped his bag by the door, walked over and hugged me tightly. "Mom," he said, "I think I finally understand. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present. Thank you for teaching me that." Tears welled in my eyes as I whispered back, "That's all I ever wanted you to know." Years from now, I know Daniel will face even bigger challenges, career struggles, heartbreak, maybe even his own family to care for. But I also know that somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, he'll remember the nights when I told him to take it easy, when I reminded him that life isn't a race but a journey. And perhaps, one day, when he has a son or daughter of his own, he'll whisper the same words, passing on not just advice but the legacy of love, patience, and resilience that carried him through. Life rarely goes the way we plan. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, in the whispered reassurances, we find exactly what we need to keep going. And that's the story of how 3 simple words, "take it easy," became the foundation of a bond stronger than fear, stronger than failure, stronger than anything life could throw our way.